Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this is very very important. Always on connectivity. Only Professor Edward, I think he has some problem with camera, but definitely he gonna hear his views. Beside that, we have Professor David Smith. We have Professor Adrian, one of the best innovators from AI industries. We have Mr. James E, Madam Ali, and our candidate from Transhumanist Party, Mr. Dan. So I want to start from yes, I want to start from Professor Edwards. Always on connectivity. So how you want to share your experience? Yes.
Well, we are always connected. I mean, in the sense of certainly in the United States and most of the developed countries, we really already have total connection at all times if we want it. Some of us turn off our equipment at nighttime. Many of us, like me, for example, I keep my smartphone. I'm holding it up, and once I get my camera fixed, you'll be able to see it. I'm holding up my smartphone right now, and so many of us have the phone on 24/7. I do it in part because I need to keep in touch with family and for purposes like that. But we already have that capacity through all of our devices, especially with Wi-Fi. And by the way, emerging 6G is going to be very important. That might be a show for the future. And so the real issue is kind of with this connectivity, always on. What are we going to be doing with it, and how are entrepreneurs going to be able to exploit it? Now, on the one hand, we have an issue of privacy. Many of us like to unplug occasionally, and many of us like to take a walk in the woods with our kids, or do things like that. I see these wonderful pictures of Ali Rice and her children playing outside, and I send her pictures of my children playing outside. So we all have that. But be that as it may, what you're going to see is a lot of competition to figure out how to use this always on connectivity. Many of us don't want right now. If you go to your email, and if you go to pretty much any website, you're going to see advertisements all over the place. And with embedded technology, with the future, for example, the future versions of Google Glasses and such, you'll be walking down the street, and as you pass a store, you'll suddenly see an ad in front of you that says, "Hey, look, we have this great product that you probably want." And of course, you get that all the time when you go on Amazon or whatever. They're always trying to sell you something. This is good because you see what's available. On the other hand, you have to sort out through all of this information overload. So that's going to be really the challenge with being on all the time. Is information overload already is a serious problem for many of us. So kind of how do you sort that out? And what are the potentials for being connected all the time and in all ways? And in the future, it's going to be also with interactive, either virtual reality or augmented reality, as we discussed in a previous show.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Professor. Professor Adrian, you have a lot of innovations with AI, augmented reality, virtual reality. Excellent innovations you have. You are working with different labs, different universities around the world. Professor, connectivity is a big issue. So what kind of new innovations you want to share with our audience, especially how we can be more connected and how we can be, this connection will be more effective? And especially when you invent some projects in AI, I saw that your projects actually give different emotional connections and relationship with the robots and humans. A very interesting thing. So can you please share some of your experience with our audience?
Yes, well, I think the 20th century was the age of information, and so we've already completed the age of that where we have basically unlimited access to information. So I think we are in the a new stage of the computing networks. So we have gone beyond connectivity. We're now in the age of hyperconnectivity. And I think the next stage is where we will go beyond data, information, which is can be logically transmitted. So, for example, words are all digital bits, and can be perfectly transmitted through the computer networks now or already. So I think the next stage is where we will connect the all of our senses to the internet, including uh, not just the information and data, but also, for example, all of our senses, including touch, taste, and smell. Right now, we can have audio-visual communication, as we are doing right now. We have this video call, audio and video. We can see each other, and I think the next stage is when we will communicate with all of the senses, including touch, and taste and smell. So you can imagine sometime in the future, I can not only see you, but send you some food through the internet, for example, or you can we can cook together through the internet. And another aspect of this, another aspect of this is when we start connecting the robots or AI to the internet. So right now uh, we are I believe everyone in here is a human being. All right, so there's about one, two, three, four, five, six screens, and we're all humans. But in the future, we may not all be humans. There may be some AI, some robots which are connected to this video call, for example, um, and maybe it may be 3D by then. But you can see my point that actually, right now, I cannot prove. There's no scientific proof that all of you are humans. You could just be computer graphics, right? Uh, and you can probably soon see that if you take the logic a little bit further, that in the future, some of you maybe uh, uh, look like humans, but actually are AI or robots, either physical robots or computer graphics robots. And so I believe will be the third stage of the computer networks. So which will be after this stage where we will not be able to tell the difference between we are talking to a human or a AI or robot. By the way, that is Turing's test, which he in 1950s he published his famous paper, the Turing test. We still haven't made any computer that can really uh, satisfy Turing test, but I believe that will come soon. And you were talking about relationships, so um, maybe I shouldn't talk too much about this, but of, of course, after that, we will begin to have friends with non-humans, right? So with robots and AIs, and we will even fall in love with non-human and AI. That's what I believe in, and eventually even get married to the robots or AI, and that each step will happen step by step. But I believe that will be the future. But I don't know when it will come. Maybe 20, 50, or 100 years away. But I believe this will be our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Adrian. Professor David Smith. Actually, we have excellent innovator, Professor Adrian, and you have excellent corporations for engaging with these developing nations, and he is actually doing excellent work in his lab and everywhere in Asia Pacific, and we are really impressed, especially young scientists. They are big fan of like this kind of innovation. What do you think, this what he discussing about this human and robotic relationship? Do you think it will be the future of connectivity? It will be the uh, like global, it will be accepted, and most people are gonna use it? What do you think?
Since you frozen, I will go ahead and get started then. Yeah, I think we're in an age of permanent digital connectivity. As we look at it, it's personal connectivity, it's device connectivity, it's beginning to be car connectivity, factory connectivity, you name it there. And one of the things as we talk about this is uh, we focus almost too much just on Wi-Fi connectivity. And as you look at always on connectivity, it goes well beyond that. And it's a huge market. Internationally, by the end of next year, it's expected to be a $150 billion marketplace. But some of the other types of connectivity is pure radio frequency, visible light, Zigbee, Bluetooth. Many of the other types of connectivity are in there too, which are going to enable not only the robotics connectivity, which I think it's going to be there, but if you look across the Internet of Things, and a robot is in some ways part of the Internet of Things, you're going to see the connectivity go even further. Uh, in my house, like on my sprinkler system for the yard, it's connected to my phone by both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and I can do different things depending on how I connect to it. You see that throughout, how we control the temperature in the house. It's all through a connected device and not going and turning knobs on the wall anymore and doing stuff like that. Even our locks, I can unlock my front door, open the garage, do all those things from my smartphone. So that type of always on connectivity is a driver. And I think in places where you are in the process of upgrading the infrastructure,
Mhm.
as you begin to establish smart communities, we will see that connectivity for the types of things that the professor was talking about extend even further across the community and across the ways to do things to where already today we have robots with always on connectivity delivering supplies, medicine in hospitals, in stores, in warehouses. We're now seeing robots who will come into your room and do a telemedicine session with you instead of doing a camera in front of you and a monitor on the wall. It's a robot with a monitor where the head is and a camera underneath it, and it rolls into the room and talks to you. So we're seeing this type of thing, which is only enabled by always on connectivity. And you begin to see those. How many of us can remember the last time we pulled out a paper map before we went somewhere? We're always using our GPS now, which again is a type of always on connectivity that is so vital to us. The real key to always on connectivity is you don't have to think about using it versus back in the early days of the internet when we had to go, okay, I want to go online. Let me get my modem booted up. Let me make that horrible connection at those horrible slow speeds. And that connectivity did not lead to a digital lifestyle. The always on connectivity today enables digital lifestyles, it enables digital manufacturing, and it's what is going to also enable digital real time government. And so, if I was talking about some of the students, like he was talking about, and part of your question, that reality of moving from an intentional connectivity to an always on connectivity really changes the type of services, the type of products, the type of business processes, and the type of government and academic processes you can do.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you, Madam Ali.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Oh. Well, the always, because I looked up what always on connectivity was just to make sure, because I'm not a technical expert by any means. And I love the way that the world's always connected, and despite the time zones, we can connect and have dialogues and conversations. But the extreme of having, you know, robots that you can't tell whether they're real or not, that's oh my God, that's really scary. I don't really understand why there's a need for that, to be honest. And I think that, you know, that there's, as ever, there's always kind of an ethical, moral dilemma that I face in anything that seems that outrageous. But I know that there's, you know, that there's strength and, you know, and that kind of, that convenience. I'm not sure whether I have too much trouble unlocking the door with my key or anything. So I think the thing is that what we really need to do, as far as I can see, is we need to figure out how technology can help countries that aren't as advanced as the Western world is, to enable them to have a healthier life that's got well-being and balance. And, you know, so I think the thing is, I think the Western world needs to pull back on our advancement to some extent, and maybe look at remote opportunities to work and study, which lockdowns has forced us to do. But essentially, I think that it could be well served for countries, you know, and that kind of speed of ability to reach people and train people, and, you know, so that's where the strength of it, I see it as. And as Ed said at the beginning, I live in a rural area in the Cotswolds. I go out walking every day. My children are connected to nature, and the natural world is still something that we all rely on. And I hope we will continue to, instead of creating things that decide that biodiversity doesn't matter, and, you know, wildlife, you know, that we don't have a place in the world, because essentially we're part of it. And I still think that the danger of thinking that we can invent, you know, robots that can replace lovers or children, or, you know, so I love my dog and there's a really strong bond, so I can see that, but she's an animal. She's not, you know, she's not been put together by some kind of technology. So so for me, you know, that there's a massive future ahead of us, and that there needs to be radical change. But that kind of radicalness, you know, I know that young people, I worry about young people, because I think young people will be persuaded to start putting chips in their heads and connect up to the internet. So, and I worry about that, because I think human potential and our ability isn't tapped by any means. And I spend lots of time doing intuitive training. I'm an artist, and essentially that intuitive mind gets neglected by constant information. And we can tap into universal kind of intelligence as well. And essentially, I think that's a much more interesting way of going through things, and sharing knowledge, so that young people can tap into that intuition too. So that's kind of, you know, that's where I'm at, really. And it's fascinating, but, you know, some of it's very scary as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Jamsid.
Thank you, Sharif. Wonderful topic, and I'm really glad that I'm coming after Ali, because I want to double down on what she's talking about, because I think a lot of people live in a virtual reality right now. The underlying reality is overlooked, and this universal connection that we're talking about here, always on, you know, that's not technology. You can go back in time and people were always connected. And I talk about the universal life force, and that animates life. And this is like light waves. We know about light waves, and we can't perceive them. I mean, there are also life waves, and we can't perceive them. We can't measure them. We can't detect them. But it's the difference between animated and inanimate objects. And so this idea of merging the two, I think, is undervaluing what it means to be human. We are not just our senses: taste, touch, smell. These things can be replicated, of course, but what it means to be fundamentally human cannot be. So you can pass a Turing test, but you cannot animate a robot. And by that, what I mean is it is not living. And it is not human in any stretch of the imagination, although it can pass for one. That I give you, no questions asked. But it is not human. So what does it mean to be human? It means that we are universally connected. And I was just reading before I came on that neutrons actually can talk to one another. Yes, we think of them as connected electrically to protons, but or through the strong and nuclear forces, but they can actually communicate with one another. Isn't that amazing? And I can remember giving up on quantum mechanics because synchronicity at a distance I just couldn't figure it out. And that was like because of my three-dimensional thinking. What about maybe they're communicating on a fourth or fifth or sixth dimension? It's so small we can't perceive it. And so they're talking to each other. So when one spin changes, the other spin changes. Even though they're remote, they're distant from one another. That was really eye-opening to me to think that communication can take place over distance. Holy smokes. And, we look at some of the ancient Indian-based philosophies of life, and they don't think of it as separate. They think of it as connected. And this is wow, that was eye-opening to me too, because we're always connected. And the problem is that human beings, the way we're trained, the way we're taught, the way we're programmed, we don't see that connection. We don't value it. So if we did value our connection, we would treat each other better. And if we put our emphasis on that, on how important that connection is, that we can't see, we can't detect, let alone measure, but is there and is real and fundamentally animates us, and it should animate our relations. And when we talk about our relations only being through zeros and ones, then we're fundamentally missing what it means to be human. So I just wanted to put that out there for my opening remarks. Thanks very much for the show, Sharif.
Thank you. Professor Adrian, if you allow me, I just want to share one of your projects on test. If you allow me. So I believe that our discussion and everything will be very interesting because it's really, really very interesting projects for me and for our speakers and audience. Professor Donald, I also want to, just a moment, I'm just sharing. Yeah. Okay. This is his projects. I think Professor Professor Adrian, if you share some views, especially on these multisensory communication projects, and then I think our other speakers, they can discuss, like Professor Donalds and Mr. Dan can discuss on that.
Yes, okay. So I think this is a BBC program, and they came to our laboratory, and I'm not sure which part of it is in my lab, but anyway, the summary is that we did a demonstration of them of devices that we built in our lab where you could stimulate taste and smell using electrical signals. And so the devices are relatively simple now because it's still very, very early days for this research. But we can already stimulate taste and smell without any actual chemicals, but using electrical signals. And in some way, this is an analogy to TV screens where we use electrical signals to stimulate our eyes to see some visual signal when it's from electrical stimulation of the television panel, for example. So with these devices, you put them directly on your tongue or inside your nose, and it stimulates the olfactory and the olfactory and smell receptors, sorry, and as well as the receptors on our tongue, the gustatory receptors. So we can thus transmit this through the internet. That's the ultimate goal, because once we can stimulate taste and smell using electricity, then this can be sent through the internet. So this is still quite bulky equipment, but I think we can imagine in after a few generations of this technology, we'll be able to send multiple sensors through the internet. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Adrian. Professor Donald, so what do you want to add? Professor Donald, can you hear me?
Muted.
Can you
Hi.
unmute, please? Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
love the optimism that people have about how soon there'll be robots and things like that. I just think it's kind of amusing because we're just, for me, my perspective personally, I was working on a project with somebody at Bell Laboratories using file transfer, basically technically FTP, Telnet, email, and the phone in 1979. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the progress of connectivity has been glacially slow because that's, of course, well more than half of my life, and I'm not that young. So I think that it's that if we look at what can actually do, we've got. I kind of go with what Douglas Hofstadter, who wrote this wonderful book called Gödel, Escher, and Bach. He's a very forward-looking computer scientist, and he says 500 years, and I think that's a little closer at the rate we're going. But we'll get there, but a lot more slowly than we think. But I really have to agree with what James said, that if you think about your shirt, how did that get made? I mean, somehow somebody made the cloth, and somebody created the cloth to make it, which required tools, which required metal, which somebody had to mine, somebody had to shape the metal, somebody had to create the dyes, somebody had to get them all together in one place for that to happen. And there's no central command that caused that to happen. There's human beings have been communicating with each other and working together since the dawn of time, and that dawn of human time, and and one symptom of that is language, which we think evolved because we were working together. We'd already started working together, and then language just kind of developed as a tool that allowed us to work together even better. So human beings have been always online, except when we're asleep, for since humans started. So now we have this. I've said this before, that minds don't end at the edge of your head. We're not. We can't exist without our connections to each other. We're created. Our personalities are created by the social situation in which we exist. And we already have always on connectivity. When I walk into my kitchen, my refrigerator wakes up. If I'm cooking something and I need to check back in an hour, I go, Alexa, set alarm for an hour. That's my refrigerator. And so I can check to see what's in my refrigerator right now if I want to. We already are highly connected, and we're getting more and more connected in the developed world. And so I think what's really interesting to me is to start understanding, like, how it shapes our identity and how it shapes what we are. And one of the things that we can observe is that it's got some real downsides, because one of the things that it's allowed us to do is to seek out people in the world that are exactly like us. And the algorithms on Facebook and TikTok and so on like that push us together to people that are exactly like us, or close to us and close to our thoughts. And when we interact with them, our thoughts become more homogeneous, not more heterogeneous. And it's right now creating these divisions in the world that are getting harder and harder to overcome, because people are so able to develop a network of people that are exactly like them or very similar to them, that they become become someone who isn't someone else. And so who part of who they are is not this other group of people. And so it makes it so it's really very difficult for them to communicate with each other, because there just simply would have to be someone else to be able to communicate with those people. And I think we have technical problems, but I think that the social problems that we're looking at are very, very interesting and disturbing. So,
Thank you. We have our Transhumanist Party representative, Mr. Dan, and actually Professor Adrian actually transforming the process. So what do you want to add today? Yes.
Yes, the always-on candidate. Well, connectivity is really a universal topic, because what is evolution? Evolution is a process of dynamically complexifying connectivity. It's got us to the point where the 3 pounds behind our eyeballs is the most interconnected piece of matter in the known universe. And what are we using this amazing brain connectivity for? We're creating more connectivity. We're creating a civilization that hopefully will continue to create systems of life and novelty and expansion. And really, that's the transhumanist idea, is to become positive actors and positively direct evolution. A lot of people say, "Oh, why should we explore or increase all this technology? We haven't solved the problems yet. We need to not go into space." Blah blah blah. No, that's an anti-evolutionary thought pattern. But I mean, I can understand that we do have a lot of problems and we haven't solved them. But we're in the process of solving it. We need to become better connected to solve them better. Now, an analogy I would say is, what if you had a terrible injury and you went into the ICU, and when someone's in the ICU, they hook them up to all these monitors. They're monitoring the heartbeat, the breathing, the brain waves. Now, what would you say if the doctor said, "Well, we're only going to leave these monitors hooked up 12 hours at a time"? You would say, "What? Get me out of this emergency room." And we really need to treat our civilization like an ICU patient right now. We need that continuous monitoring of all the systems, the watersheds, the atmosphere, the climate. So we all should become ICU doctors for the climate. Treat it like a patient that needs a lot of attention. And there's a fun side to connectivity too. I mean, look at the song Frank Sinatra said, "I want to wake up in a town that never sleeps." He's talking about New York, a town that never sleeps. And the internet never sleeps either. You can go on the internet. People trade currencies and economic units 24/7, 365, because there's always a trade happening somewhere around the world. So, the information age is really the directed evolution age. And if we do discover that we're not alone, if we do evolve to the next level from Homo sapiens sapiens to Homo universalis, it will be because we discover that 8th chakra that is outside of and hovering above our heads, that is a portal to the chi, the life force. We will embody the sense of life and connectivity as a natural sense, just as natural as hearing and sight and our other senses are today. So I'm excited to get more connected.
Yes, I don't know. In the future, I want to see a robot is your running mate for your elections. So yeah, I love to say, I don't know. It's possible. Yeah, in
well,
future,
it's
maybe.
funny you should. I actually devised an acronym for Dan Tweed, and I want to make a watershed sensor, and Dan Tweed would stand for Distributed Autonomous Network for Topological Watershed Exploration Display Technology. Because I think the watershed is, so I mean, when I say Dan Tweed for City Council, I'm also running this network that can heal our watershed of our planet for City Council. And
excellent. Professor Adrian, is it possible that a robot can be running mate for any politicians? I don't know, in the future in US elections.
Yes, I think so. I think someone mentioned before about, I'm not sure it was James, about whether the AI is living or not, and I agree that the computers and robots and AI may not be living in any sense of the way we are living. So I think that we simply don't know until these artificial intelligence AI robots become intelligent enough. We simply don't know whether they will have any form of life. But then again, the so-called simulation will be so good, we probably cannot tell cannot tell the difference between, let's say, living human beings and uh, maybe non-living artificial intelligence. Maybe we cannot tell the difference because the, let's say, simulation is so good. So then if we not neglect that issue, but if we uh, put that issue as a separate issue, whether the AI robots are alive or not, then I believe yes, certainly robots and AI can run as politicians, and and uh, and I believe in the future we will allow AI and robots to run for election, and we don't know whether they'll get voted in or not, but they might. So we can't discount that. Um, so
Yes.
um, so I think it definitely is possible, and uh, and I think it will become a point where the AI is as intelligent as a human being in almost every sense of the word, and then it will become more intelligent, because one thing we can't do uh, yet, maybe in the future we can, is plug our brain into the internet. But the AI will be able to become more and more intelligent, because it can, essentially suck up all the knowledge, or maybe not knowledge, maybe it's not really knowledge, maybe all the data on the internet. It can suck it up into its brain, whereas we don't have that capacity to do that. Not at this stage, anyway. And so I think not just politicians, but almost every job will be able to be uh, undertaken by robot and AI, including doctor, surgeon, lawyer. Maybe they will be much better than us. I recently had a injury with my foot, and I saw three different doctors with the three different what do you call it? Three different prognosis and three different prescriptions, and then I realized all of them know nothing. So I spent 1 hour on on Google to figure out what the hell is wrong with my foot, and then I went to get the medicine myself. So, honestly speaking, I think doctor is easily will be able to be um, done better by artificial intelligence, and then surgeon as well, because surgeons basically need extremely delicate hands. So robots should be able to do a much better job than humans. So my question is, what job could not be done by AI? I can't even think of a job that eventually won't be able to be done by artificial intelligence. I think I asked this question to a friend, and they said priest or something. But I think we can all imagine a robot priest that you know uh, it can preach religion to us as well. So I still um, I think one question, we can reverse the question. What instead of the question, can a politician be a robot? We can invert that question. What job could not be done by a robot eventually, right? From me thinking about it, I cannot think of any job that cannot be done by AI robot eventually in the future. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Professor. Professor David Smith. I think today's discussion very interesting. So, what new things you want to add? So,
To me, I tend to want to go back to the state of what is possible once we have always on connectivity. What is possible as we go to the concept that we always can reach out to someone else, that machines can always reach out to other machines. What is possible for us to begin to do things like with always on connectivity, to have education just in time. I mean, I feel comfortable working on my appliances now, working on my car, doing things which I have no training for. But because of my always on connectivity, I can do the training to do those things just in time. I can go and connect pieces of things together to work that in the past were discrete steps and had no common ground to them because of always on connectivity. And to me, that is one of the biggest changes we're seeing now, is the fact that we can do so much more than what we did in the past. The fact that we can communicate globally at an instance where we could not do that before. The ability to do a show like yours, when if I look on the screen today, right now, we're seeing what each of us are doing in real time, thousands and thousands of miles apart. There's not any barriers to us doing things. If we wanted to bring in other people, other websites, other pieces of information, sensor data, go and pull up the cameras inside the parliament meeting in a couple of different countries, we could do that immediately right now in real time because of always on connectivity. And this ability to do it in real time and the ability to learn in real time makes a huge difference. I feel comfortable assigning hard problems to, for example, my development team, because I know when I walk behind them or see them, that if they don't understand how to do something, because of their always on connectivity, they will go search and find the answers, learn enough to do it, and then apply it. So to me, that this is the big paradigm shift. And it is a huge paradigm shift that always on connectivity allows us to do.
thank you, Professor David Smith. Madam Ali.
Okay. No, I think that sounds amazing. And as you know, when you were saying that kind of assigning hard problems and pushing out to a team, I think with the, you know, with what you're trying to do, Sharif, that you've got that team around you, and essentially that's, you know, that virtual, you know, that virtual provision of ideas and expertise is what everyone needs to do to try and kind of cross coordinate and cross pollinate, you know, something. So there's a shift in the way that we do things as well, so that you're actually tapping into the expertise and kind of high level practice, even though we're so far away. So I think that's fantastic. I think going back to Professor Adrian, one of the things that AI can't do is that they can't draw with the same touch as a human being with a pencil. And I'm in touch with there's a lot of animators, and they've tried really hard, but computers still can't have the delicacy of touch. And essentially, I think that delicacy of touch is one of the things that makes us human. And that's the same, you know, when we're dealing with, you know, my husband was a psychiatric nurse, so, you know, with mental health or well-being, that delicacy of touch and nurturing with a teacher as well, you know, with young people or with, you know, so essentially that delicacy of touch and emotion and compassion. So I think that's where humans kind of arguably stand aside from the robots. So you know, so I think that's one of the things. And I wonder if AI is going to take over everything. You know, what people are going to do with their time and energy, and how they're going to, you know, have a livelihood. You know, you know, because we can't keep taking away jobs and not give people something to do, unless, which is what I think, that we should tune into our gifts and talents and recognize where our genius lies. And if everyone did that, and we were all doing something that, you know, we have purpose and passion for, so that would be a great world. You know, that's what I encourage my children to do. So, you know, there's nothing better than seeing people reach their dreams and using their talents. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Mr. Jamsid.
Thank you, Sharif. Wonderful show. And I want to emphasize that I'm all for technology. I'm amazed at what Professor Adrian has already accomplished. I really agree with the paradigm shift that David mentioned. And these are all very important things. And I tip my hat to, you know, just being able to connect to someone in Malaysia and England and most amazingly of all, Austin. This is just you know, great application of the technology, you know, but we always have to ask ourselves, why are we doing it? And it all comes back to our humanity. And, you know, one of the things you know, my humor is absurdist, and, you know, is artificial intelligence capable of simulating absurdities? Because I think that's a human quality. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, if you haven't had this experience, I'm sorry, but you know, you can make eye contact across a room with someone, and there can be a tremendous amount of information shared, tremendous amount of data transfer, and electricity across the room that no one else perceives. And these are the types of things that I think are human. And I'm not sure that I can make eye contact with an artificial intelligence and have that same experience. I'm not sure. But you know, that the idea that we can't detect some of the forces in the universe, let alone measure them, how are we going to simulate them? So I think that there are limitations to what we can and cannot simulate. But we might as well push the envelope of what we can do. But I think, you know, again, I want to make the point that too many of us live in a virtual reality already, where we go about leading lives of quiet desperation. And we want to live lives of quiet dignity and to experience the things that Ali was just talking about. These are the types of things, the art, you know, whether it's music, mathematics, whatever it is, where you're expressing yourself on a level that is the best that you can do, and the feelings that go along with that. You know, these are things, that's why the technology is really the question of why ought to be how do you enhance that experience for everyone, not just for those in the developed world, not just for those that have access to it, but for everyone. Is that our goal? That's the why part of it that I want people to pay attention to. Why are we doing this? Is it so that we can transfer zeros and ones faster? I don't think so. It's the idea is that what we want to accomplish is to help everyone live lives of quiet dignity, where it eases the pain and suffering that so much of humanity experiences. And I think that if that's our goal, then, you know, I'm all for it. But if our goal is to make data cash transfers faster, you know, I'm not so excited. So it's why are we doing this that I want to spend a little time focusing on. Thanks.
Thank you. Professor Donald.
Well, when I'd say the stuff that what we're trying to consider and what's important to consider, it's sometimes people react by saying, well, we support technology and so on like that. And, you know, I want to remind people that I don't do it now, but actually I'm learning Rust, which is kind of fun. But I've been a systems programmer for, 30 years. And I've written communication software that GTE, the telephone company GTE, uses to transfer billing records from their switches at the end of the town to their central offices, which is basically communication. I'm one of the people that's makes this happen. So I'm certainly like it, and I'm excited by it, and I like to see what happens. I want to kind of, I think both James and Ali are talking about something though that I think is really important. I think there's a level or a contrast of what we're talking about, and I really detect that people have just not spent the time to really delve into neuroscience, linguistics, and sociology. I think that there's a lot of time spent on the very highly technical aspects of it, but the effort to understand human beings is actually pretty critical. I've been reading a lot of, actually I cheat. I read the Cliff Notes versions of Kant and Hegel and Marx lately. And Marx and Hegel both had the view that we were evolving towards some greater truth. Um, Freud also, it was kind of this whole idea that there's this underlying hidden thing that we all share. So Kant called it absolute knowledge. And it was the idea that there's knowledge that we could all get to if we basically do the right things in our life. Schopenhauer was very, in his favorite book was the Upanishads. And so he was very, and so he had a similar idea. He called it will, the universe becoming. And we could all get to that, but we were separated from it by our desires and things like that. It's very, I think Jim would like totally listen to that and go, oh yeah, you know that stuff. But the reason I'm saying that is because, you know, human beings have somehow managed to work together in some sort of a way, and there is an intuition that there's something underlying that connects us all. And many philosophers have had the idea about the importance of language and the connection that we have because of that, or it's an indication of connection. But as we learn more about humans and how humans work, one of the things that's important in neuroscience is mirror neurons. And what that happens is that when you see somebody else do something physically, there's neurons in your body that fire, that simulate what you're seeing. And I notice that sometimes when we go to concerts, I'm like just mesmerized by the guitar players because I play guitar. And so my body is reacting. I'm sort of playing the guitar while they're doing it. And when they're doing just fantastic things that are unimaginable, I mean, I get a sense that I'm doing it, even though I couldn't possibly do it. I think that's a good reason people like sports so much. I never really played sports a lot when I was a kid, but if somebody played football when they were in high school, when they're watching a football game, they're the ones that are throwing that great pass and things like that. And so we're connected in many ways that we don't even understand. I'm going to throw in one other thing, which is fascinating, which is that people have a tendency to move to towns that have the same first letter as their last name. So I couldn't figure out why I like Palo Alto so much, but my last name's Steiny, Stanford, and there you go. They studied the number of people who in Georgia named Georgia. And they asked the question, there's twice as many women in Georgia named Georgia as there are in the average in the country. And so they asked the question, well, is it because people in Georgia named their kids Georgia, or is it because people named Georgia moved to Georgia? And by carefully studying income tax records, and tax records, they determined that people named Georgia moved to Georgia. And so there's all these things that we're doing that we don't even know that we're doing, but yet they connect us together in ways that we can't even know. So I think that with always on connectivity, as I said, it makes more, because like when I had dinner with Doug Engelbart, who was the person who's credited with making the graphical user interface, Doug told me that he was pissed about the graphical user interface because it dumbed down connections to computers. Like, people know less about computers now than they did when I was, than they did 30 years ago, because you had to learn something about computers because the stupid things didn't work all the time, and you were always constantly rebooting them and doing this and that just to get them to work. But now they're like toasters or micro. They're just, you push buttons and things happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what Doug was thinking is writing user interfaces that would allow you to do integration by parts without even thinking about it, so that you could start making do engineering things that were beyond incredible. And I think that that's something that we can do. It isn't being done a lot right now. And I think that goes more towards the transhumanist and the kind of view of expanding ourselves. I think we're a very, very, very long way from having robots that'll start having empathy and all the things that are necessary to be able to actually communicate with each other in any meaningful way. But I think that with the always on communication, it won't be all that long till we'll be able to start interfacing in fairly, ordinary ways with graphical user interfaces and simple voice, like we do now, like, a teeny subset of human language that will be able to allow us to do more things. And of course we can right now. I mean, I can know like there's a giant fires happening in California, and I can look up instantly and see what the parameters of the fires are and where they are. There's just so much stuff like that we can do now. And I think that that what I do and what I study and what I find is interesting is like how human beings actually work, so I can start to be able to understand myself, and also start to look at what's possible as I create software or create models for software that's available. I want to say the one thing is, I don't agree with Hegel and Marx. I don't agree that we're evolving towards some future that it's teleological, that there's an end goal or a direction that we're heading. I think it's more evolutionary, and evolution is cruel. So we could very, very well be headed towards on a path that doesn't work out for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Donald. Thank you. This is really excellent discussion. But one thing, as I am from developing nations, I see different changes in different level, especially why I believe in modern science, engineering, and technology. I saw that when technology and advanced technology comes in our systems, we have a lot of corruptions. And when technology comes, technology actually reduce the corruption. That is the major things. Technology naturally reduce corruption. And reality is that I do not mind if some robot come to the politics, become running mate, and robot can reduce some political corruption. I don't mind. Reality is that I saw when let's say this mobile money transferring come to Bangladesh, I saw that our money, like money transferring and many problem actually solved. And this way actually our corruption reduced. When example World Bank introduced the good software for the government tenders in planning ministry, I saw that corruption and everything reduced. So I believe that some point, our human civilizations and human community, we have, especially developing nations, maybe developed nations completely different. There are many system error, there are corruptions, there are challenges, but I believe that with the help of modern science, modern engineering and technology, we can make it more, our system more efficient, more effective, and our connection become more productive. That will be the major helps. Otherwise, we human, we create a lot of problem for our community. That is the truth. And this is all of the system error. I'm just sharing my experience from the developing nations. Example, for the vaccine, I saw there is a corruptions. uh, it's happening in the around my community. I don't mind if robots come and vaccine distributions and everything perfect, or AI come and our people get proper vaccines, and in our political system and everywhere we reduce some corruption. So that's why World Talent Economy Forum I grow, and most of the cases I bring developed nations people, because you people have excellent idea, excellent thought. Even my personal life change. Example, from Oxford Union, when I first go there, I learned from the brilliant people and they changed my life. And I know the people like you, people like Professor Adrian, Professor Donald, Professor David, and all of our speakers, the more they engage with our communities, our community will be benefited. That is the reality. So that's why we heavily share our content and everything to the developing nation, especially the academy, because only education is the way of solving many things, and maybe technology can helps to improve our system. And personally I saw from the system that how technology help us. So this is actually excellent discussions, excellent thought provoking, and definitely it will be very interesting for our audience. I want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start from Mr. Dan.
Yeah, this is a great show. I mean, connectivity. What a topic. We're influencing our evolution, and something I would say that's fundamental to evolution and connectivity is every organism we see has two rules. You could, if you want to simplify it, but it wants to accumulate plus factors, and it wants to push away negative factors, like a primitive one-celled organism. It goes toward food, it goes away from threats, it goes toward things it's liked and away things it doesn't like. So, given these two rules, now evolution has created all these connected systems. And, people don't like the price system very much, but it's actually the sum of all these going toward things you like and going away from things you don't like. It has created the price system. A lot of people think, "Oh, that's a stupid system." We could have a command economy and distribute stuff more intelligently. But try as people have, it's pretty hard to beat that, because it's what's called a complex dynamical system. It's a spontaneous order, and I think we can improve the price system by pricing things that we don't price properly, and we can improve that by collaborating more, like by letting people have more information. Think of all the events that you would be interested in that you don't know about right now. This inspired me to write a little newsletter called the Cyber Deli, where I was into the libertarian movement, so I had all the libertarian events in there. I was into the space movement. I had all the space upcoming events in there. I tried to just put it all in chronological order, so someone like me, who was a budding transhumanist, could say, "Oh, okay, what's coming up tomorrow? Oh, look, there's this cool thing," And I put in the notes that there was a magazine called Claustrophobia that actually took the L5 News, took the Commercial Space Report, took the Brain Mind Bulletin, a bunch of other little newsletters. They bound them all together with one of those comb binder things, and you got it cheaper than trying to subscribe to all of them. But now the internet is like letting you do this very easily. So I think that's great. Why all these techno-optimistic movements are taking advantage of all this techno-optimistic connected behavior. And one other thing about kind of a side note, we all have these little Alexa boxes and things. These come by default in something called sidewalk mode, where it takes a little bit of your connectivity and it looks out there with Bluetooth and its little radio. And if it finds a neighbor's device, it's going to create what's called a mesh network for like ubiquitous connectivity. And, it's probably if you have one of these Alexa or Amazon devices, it's probably already doing that. unless you specifically disable it. But I think this is a good thing because it's being used for safety purposes. Your Ring doorbell could be in there. There's connectivity devices called like the Shot Spotter, which can hear gunshots, and because it can hear where they came from, and you can dispatch people to respond to things like a gunshot. So I think using all these things, all this connectivity for life and health and safety, has got to be where we put the emphasis. And that'll do it for me. I'm complete, and thanks again.
Thank you. Professor Adrian, what's your concluding remarks?
Concluding, someone mentioned about what will we do if AI and robots can take over all of our jobs. And my university president in Japan, Professor Ichiya Nakamura, has written a book about this topic. And the book title is Super Free Time Society. And actually, I can't remember the famous author, but more than 100 years ago predicted we would not be working even at the end of the 20th century. But actually that never happened. We ended up working more. But I think we are going to get to that point where we actually don't need to work anymore. And what do we do then? Well, as I said, my university president has written a book about that. He called it Super Free Time Society. So it's going to be a maybe next stage of humanity where 24 hours a day we can do anything we want and we don't have to work a single minute anymore. That may be the future. Thank you very much for this great show.
Thank you. Professor David Smith, what's your concluding remarks?
My concluding remarks really are focused on the fact that for the most of us in developed nations, always on connectivity, you do not even think about anymore. As I've been traveling to some of the developing nations, for a lot of the countryside I've been in, you do not think about always on connectivity. I cannot remember the last time I checked into a hotel room that I did not have Wi-Fi in my room. In the last couple of other countries I traveled in, I never lost data on my smartphone. So always on connectivity is becoming more of a way of life than a lifestyle choice. I can tell you, I've even changed how I pack my bag different. I used to have an alarm clock in my bag. I no longer have an alarm clock. I use my smartphone. And Dan, yes, I do use Alexa on my smartphone as well, even though its mainstay is Siri on my iPhone. So you begin to see that type of connectivity too. I can tell you in my kitchen, I don't use the timers on the stuff anymore. I will tell Alexa, set a timer for this, set a timer for that. So it's becoming a way of life, and it's becoming a digital connectivity is the way we operate today. And if we went back to not having it, it would make dramatic changes in our life. And to me, that's one of the real important type things. And we just have to remember, it's always on connectivity is driven by our use of semiconductors. And right now there's a shortage, so some of that's going to impact the speed of execution. But this digital lifestyle is here. It's not going back. And thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Professor David. This is excellent session, really excellent session. Madam Ali.
Okay, so I think it's exciting, and my son at the moment, he goes to sixth form. I don't know, as anyone that knows anything about the British education is just about to start his A levels, so he goes to sixth form tomorrow. And essentially at the moment he's playing and working with his friends in the other room, and I don't have to take him anywhere. He's having real-time conversations and still doing his work and preparing. So I think, so I love the fact that that's there for him, and he's constantly connected, and I'm constantly connected with you guys. When I come on here, I could speak to my sister that lives in Texas and have real-time conversations. So I think it's fantastic. And I'm quite curious to read the book and know what's going to happen when we all don't have to work. But I think one of the things that really matters to me is that I do what I love, and doing what you love, maybe that's something that we should aim for, and happiness and fulfillment, you know. So I know that Professor Adam is obviously loves what he does and is pushing the boundaries, and it's fantastic, you know. And I think, you know, every single person on this panel, you know, everyone gets up in the morning and they're passionate because they love what they do. I love what I do and where it's going to take me, and I don't know where I'm going, but it's exciting. And I've never known where I was going since I went around the world when I was 21 and worked in the States. And I worked in Malaysia, and I spent 10 years working in the middle of the wilderness, where we were away from technology. We created, we basically backpacked, we cooked our own food, we backpacked in Yosemite, you know how awesome that is. And I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie, so that's how old I am. But that's, you know, so I think the thing is, we have to kind of remember where the virtual world is and where the real world is, and take action that encourages prosperity and connection with the real world, so we don't lose track of who's who and what's what, and whether somebody's human, whether someone's not. And how we base, as you know, our judgment on humanity, because everyone has value. And essentially, if everyone realized that they had value and they had some part to play in the time that they were here, so that they left a legacy, maybe that's what's exciting, you know. So I think that we're here because we want to be fulfilled, and the best fulfillment we can have is to be of service to others, whether that be our children, you know, it's a 90-year-old friend that lives down the road that I called yesterday, or, you know, or have a mass impact on the world, you know, that changes something massively. So, you know, and I think, and just that connectivity to kind of, so somebody that I was speaking to yesterday was talking, they were saying that Satanism is essentially turning something that's righteous and pure, like a child, into something that feels less than what they can be, you know, that potential. That's why I love children, because their potential and their imagination hasn't been tainted, and they think anything's possible. And you know, essentially, I still haven't lost that kind of that thought process that anything's possible, and you know, and people can achieve their dreams, you know. And the whole world, you know, we've got enough in the world to feed everybody, but there's a massive distribution problem, because we've got excessive amounts of food in the West and waste mountains, and there's still people in poverty, and not, you know, so it's kind of, there's a massive radical change that needs to happen. But there is enough if we're fair and we're not greedy, you know, and we're not, you know, so we need to stop being so consumerist and start looking about, you know, counting the blessings that we've got. That's what I do. So yeah, and that's what lockdown enabled me to do most of all, to be honest, because I still get to go outside and walk the dog. That's the one thing that didn't change. So yeah. But this came, you know, this virtual, you know, virtual connection. Thank you, Sharif. It's exciting, you know, and we can innovate and still be at home and still be with our kids. How cool is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, no, that is definitely. I'm also excited. I'm when I'm discussing with you right the way, I'm getting emails that even Malaysian Ministry of Environment and many ministries actually observing our show. They are inviting us. 25 October we have special episodes. So not only that, even different countries government, they are observing our show, and they really appreciate World Talent Economy Forum initiative and the discussions of all of our speakers. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy when I find that it's actually improving human lives, and different government take it seriously. So day and night we are actually working. We want more support from our speakers. Mr. James Reed, what's your concluding remarks?
Thank you, Sharif, for another wonderful opportunity. And I've always learned something on your shows, and today is no exception. Really, really happy. Ali, I really love what you were saying. And I think that somehow, some way, we need to get into a post-capitalist society. And I think you're summing up what this is: unlocking human potential, the human genius that's there. And a spiritual advisor once told me, "Never let the child inside you die." And so there is something to be said for keeping that type of enthusiasm and potential alive, because it doesn't matter how old you get, you still have contributions to make, and you can still learn something. And I still own I'm really pro technology, and all these changes are amazing to me, but I still own a globe, an atlas, and a dictionary. I have no need for them. And why do I still have them? They have sentimental value. So, I don't know if sentimentality is a virtue or a vice, but I succumb to it. The other thing is let's not make the mistake of thinking that this technological change is going to rid us of corruption. Yes, all those types of things that Sharif mentioned are absolutely true. The more data you have, the more you can track it, and the more secure it can be. That's absolutely true. But we have to ask ourselves, what about the Ponzi schemes that are still out there? They are more efficient. What about the robot calls? What about the identity thefts, and all the scams, because the scammers are always one step ahead of us. So our security comes in after the fact. Oh yeah, then they figured out something else, and then their security comes in after the fact. So we're not rid of the threats of corruption, and these people then tend to be not smarter, but just more incentivized. And if we have a post-capitalist society, maybe that incentive goes away. And we won't have so many scam artists who are looking at why is Jeff Bezos going to space? I'm going to steal his money. And, so incenting people to live their lives the way they want to live them, to reach their potential, so that they can feel the absolute joy and wake up happy to have another chance at doing what you love. These are the things we want to motivate people to do. And also with the technology change, we always have to ask ourselves, who controls it? Yeah, because who controls the means of production is always got to be one of the things we have to be careful about. Because if someone controls this connectivity, then we will learn what they want us to learn and nothing else. So this is something that we always have to be aware of, but it doesn't have to limit our joy in the potential of what can happen. Because both things are, but trust but verify, that kind of thing. It's, you want to look at the good, the nature, the potential, the possibilities, and they're so exciting to think about. But also beware, be smart. Don't do things just because you can do them and think that they'll take care of themselves, because they don't. History teaches us that they don't take care of themselves. Yes, we have to be aware of the technology that we employ, how it can be corrupted, how it can be used, because there are malicious forces in the universe as well. They're destructive forces that are not aligned with our best intent. And so as long as we do this, prudently, then I think that all of these advances should be applauded, and I do applaud them. Thank you, Sharif. Wonderful show.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Professor Donald. What's your concluding remarks?
Well, I want to point out one thing, that there was a book written about the future of work. There's actually two books written by a guy named Norbert Wiener. One of them he wrote in 1946, and the other he wrote in 1950. The first one was called Cybernetics, which is where the term came from. Cybernetics, Norbert Wiener basically coined, not basically, he coined the term. And then in 1950, he wrote a book called The Human Use of Human Beings, which was a talk about society that was post-work. What'll happen when mechanical slaves take over all the tasks that we shouldn't even be doing, because they're just what mechanical slaves do. We don't want to be slaves. And here it is 70 years later, and we're writing books about the same thing. And as far as I can see, we're not all that much closer. But regardless, um, perhaps it'll happen faster than I anticipate. But I, I think that it goes to something that Jim was saying. Like if we have intelligent, in quotes, robots, and we want, and like, let me say it a different way. The applications of some sort of ideal artificial intelligence to something like corruption would have to be able to have the understanding of human behavior, the initiatives of human behavior, that it understood the motivations at the exact instant that somebody was motivated to do something corrupt. And that's not necessarily something they plan on doing. They see an opportunity, and at that moment, they take that opportunity. And so, to be able to understand that, we'd have to be able to really start understanding human desire and human motivation. And I think maybe building desire into a artificial intelligence system might be not the wisest thing in the world for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the fact that desire is in Buddhism is considered the source of pain and suffering and unhappiness. So building unhappiness into a device that can then like use that unhappiness to cause problems for itself and others may not be the smartest path that we could take. But regardless, I think that one of the things that really helps with corruption is transparency. And I think that our always on system allows us to have many eyes on things that we wouldn't normally have to have. And I agree 100% with Jim. Like there are people out there figuring out every hour, every second about how to use this technology to do something basically corrupt. And so we've got a challenge with that. But I also think that as individuals, and when we talk about education, a lot of times we seem to be talking about training, like teaching people to do specific tasks. But real education is the sense of being able to ask questions and not believe what you hear. Basically, be able to use the resources from all that are available to us 24/7 to be able to start reaching out and understanding the world better. And so I think that that's kind of the important thing that we need to look at while we're working on always on connectivity.
Thank you, Professor Donald. You bring a very important point of educations. So I just want to share just 30 seconds my personal experience. Like when we developed this Cambrian Education Group in Bangladesh, I can remember that time, 2005, Bangladeshi teacher salary was $25, lowest salary in the countries. Even they get lowest salary than even a security guards. That is the reality. So that times I take the responsibilities. We introduce modern technology, let's say digital education, digital training. We bring the best resources from my countries. From 80,000 people, I bring 1,600 employees. We train them, and from $25, we increase salary $1,000. Try to understand how challenging that was. From $25, I increased the salary $1,000. That time it was very challenging. Everybody said it will fail, this project will not survive, this, that, we will lose the business, many things. After 3 years, our organization became one of the biggest organization in Bangladesh because of technology we utilize. Even the COVID-19 periods, I get many calls from my students and administrations, even the governments and here and there, because as I develop most advanced education system with digital education, like that time Bangladeshi student never use laptop. We provide 10,000 students, 10,000 laptop. All of the education goes digitalized. All of the system, like we go automations and everything's, and that is the benefits. That is the benefit I saw in my us. I know there are many scammers or other things, but we have to believe in people who develop technology, human talents. So actually people are very powerful, I believe. And if they can move with a systematic way, I believe that we can solve many things. So that is one of my personal experience, I'm just sharing. I saw that how technology actually helps. There are many challenges when you start anything new. Maybe there are a lot of challenges, but we can solve together. Mr. Markley, what is your concluding remarks for today? And thank you
Well,
everyone for your continuous support for this excellent discussion.
beginning and concluding remarks, I was actually thinking about a lot of things that you were talking about and reflecting on them. Glad that I could pop in and join the discussion. Was fascinated by a lot of things that various people were saying, including my good buddy Jim Ead and all of that. Even coming back to your concept of education, because I was thinking about the fact that you had that big percentage increase in the amount of pay for the educators. And I know that that's something that I'm hoping will happen somewhere here, even in the United States, because as we know, even here in this Western nation, our teachers are way underpaid and they need to get a lot more money than they are getting for the kinds of work that they do. I remember that one of the Hollywood producers made that statement even in the beginning of the pandemic, because they realized how much work was going on the teachers, and they had to do some of that work themselves. So even though Hollywood and the music industry has some people that are paid very high, definitely there are some in the athletic fields as well. They were realizing after they had to have that experience, and I could have told them that a long time ago, because my parents, my mom, and others have been in that teaching field, that they do so much work and deserve to get a lot more money. I was also thinking about something that Jim Ead said, because while I may not have a globe, I'm not above and opposed to having a globe, and not opposed to having some of the other things that folks may consider things that are bygone and bypassed. As a matter of fact, I'm sitting over here looking at my digital clock, but sometimes I like having the old-fashioned clocks as well. So sometimes that is a great thing to go on as well. So I've even got at one time I had the old flip phone, even though now I've got one of those lovely Androids and things of that nature. So it's all right to have things that some people may consider antiquated. And one of the books that I've been reading off and on, you probably be reading it more than I have been, is a book called Mr. Know-It-All. And it's about a guy that literally was going around reading the encyclopedia because he was finding different words in different ways. And, he was just kind of like going to read the encyclopedia from end to end. And he found little historical notes about all kinds of historical figures, whether that was Napoleon, whether that was Mr. Hitler, or a number of others. But he was finding these nuggets of truth as he was reading and all of that. So that's one of the other things is that is very basic, even in technology, is the whole notion of reading, that concept of reading, which is very fundamental and very much a part of technology as well. So definitely I've been enjoying reading that book and sharing that book. And as I was telling Mr. Dan over there, the man behind Intentioneering, just finished doing not that long ago a Black Business Expo, or as we called it, the Black Business Olympics. It had a lot of people talking about technology, talking about ways to use technology to have things developed within our African-American communities. But there was a gentleman named Bruce George, and his whole motto is genius is common. And that concept is the whole concept of the fact that we all have a genius in us. And I know that's something that Jim Ead also believes in us. So while we may not have a quote unquote Mensa ability of the genius knowledge, we all have a talent, and we need to be proud of that talent and definitely use that talent on a regular basis. So he started a whole YouTube movement where he's showing people, everybody from a cook to a chef to a number of other folks, but they are highlighting what their skill set is, what they are wonderful at, and all of that. So I'm a big supporter of what he does, but it also plays into technology as well. And of course, anytime that we can get people involved in getting technology in areas that are not as affluent and already getting it as much, I'm a big proponent of that, because there is a gentleman who unfortunately is facing some immigration issues out of Canada by the name of Adrian Martinka. And he is originally from one of the Slavic nations, but he was given thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands around the world, computers to folks, particularly in poor and minority communities, so they could actually have more connection to the world, because we are a world economy. That's definitely even the name of your forum here and everything. So he was making these computers available to the kids. But unfortunately, you know, we sometimes when you're engaged in a passion, and he was living in Kernersville, North Carolina, even though he's of Slavic descent, and they also have Canadian roots and some Canadian ties. He had gone to one of their offices in Canada and got stuck there because, you know, you still have to follow the rules, still have to follow the rules of engagement, even in government. So they were so busy giving these computers away and trying to make life better for people in the inner city, in the poor areas around the country, that he was sitting there, and he and his sister, who are the people behind these organizations, got stuck in Canada and are facing immigration issues. So they are kind of slowed down with what they're doing and are hoping that they can find people that will support them and get them back to North Carolina so they can continue their journey, or at least continue it more efficiently, because this is a young man who is 30 years old, if I remember correctly, and he is not going to let something like immigration and government rules stop him from doing the work that he was destined to do and all of that. So that's a little bit of the things that I was reflecting on based on what a number of other folks were saying. So that's a little bit that I will share about technology and the role of it in that regard. So I hope to come back on and share more about what's going on in my world and ways that I can help. I see that there are a number of friends, some new friends like the Dan that I referred to, Mr. Engineering, as well as Donald, and my old friend, Jim E, that I see here and everything. But I'm glad to see some new acquaintances as well. So look forward to learning more about y'all and definitely getting involved in ways that we can help Mr. Sharif do the fascinating and wonderful work that he is doing also. And on that note, as they say in Clubhouse, I'll land the plane.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really great sessions, and I request everyone share our content as much as possible. Connectivity is productivity, and we believe in connectivity. Thank you, Professor David Smith, Professor Adrian, Mr. Dan, Mr. James Eid, Professor Donalds, Mr. Markley, and Ali Rice for your support for World Talent Economy Forum. Bye-bye and take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.